Appreciate that.
Holly Hughes, what is your take on this scandal of the Josh Duggar situation?
Well, the word hypocrisy jumps out, and I think that's what's got everybody riled up. The parents are not under the law. They're not what we call mandatory reporters. So parents don't have to turn their children in. That is a moral decision. And what people are so angry about, King, is that this show is based on these folks taking a high moral ground and holding themselves up to, be Bible-believing, God-fearing Christians, and yet what they've done is chosen to hide something that morally, even though legally they don't have to report. If you're a social worker, a doctor, a teacher, and you suspect abuse, then you're a mandatory reporter under the law. You have to call, like Oprah's people did, call the child abuse hotline, call the local law enforcement, call the authorities, say somebody needs to look into this. The parents don't legally have to do it, but everybody is PO'd because morally they're lobbying against other people. They're casting stones. Those who live in glass houses, as the saying goes, should not be throwing stones.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going out and they're saying, we want to lobby against gay people because they're child molesters, and we want to lobby against the LGBT community because they're a danger to children, when in fact they had someone in their own household who was molesting children and was causing problems. And so that is why people are so angry. And as we heard on the report from Randy Kay just now, the statute of limitations on his crimes have run. So there's nothing that the criminal justice system can do, or even the civil justice system, because the statute of limitations is run on that. And the sad thing is they've got an amazing learning opportunity. You know what? Do a show about this and address it and admit we messed up. Our son was, accused of these crimes, and we should have gotten him some serious counseling with a psychiatrist. We should have reported it. We should have seen that the victims had help. This is a fantastic learning opportunity. This is something that you could put on the show and say, this is what we did, and we now understand that this was an absolutely improper way to handle the situation, and we are sorry because we probably re-victimized these young people who were inappropriately touched. And they could turn it into a positive, but given their stance and given all the hiding they've been doing thus far, I don't see them doing that. Everybody makes mistakes. People sometimes commit crimes. Annie and I are both defense attorneys, and we'll tell you, we've had clients who have done one really dumbass thing, and they pay for it, but then they get their lives back on track, they get rehabilitated, and they're never caught up in the system again. It is possible to help people, but you've got to come forward and you've got to fess to what you did, and you have to accept responsibility. And all this hiding and running, and I think Ann will agree with me on this, people who abuse children, that's not a one-time thing.
Right.
That is a continuing, ongoing pattern, and if you don't get serious psychological counseling for that, you don't magically get cured. It's not going to happen.
And your take on the whole Josh Duggar situation?
Well, great minds think alike, and a greater mind is Holly's. I totally agree. And I always said, I used to prosecute these cases. Now I handle cases for victims. I also defend. I'm a defense attorney as well. I've always thought once a pedophile, always a pedophile. I mean, you've got these patterns and obviously he had a pattern because he had far more than one victim. And to come out and just say, I failed, I did something really inexcusable in my teens, as if it's some youthful transgression, that could be remedied, I think is really misleading given the patterns that we know and given the damage that he did to these kids. I mean, the damage from childhood sexual abuse is lifelong. I mean, the studies all say that. It's really debilitating. So I agree with Holly. Take it up in a positive way, maybe in a way that could help people. And finally, I look at this as projectionism. When people come out and say, you're bad because you're gay or you're transgender or, you're in some way different than the way I am, it oftentimes I've seen in cases means certain people are saying, you know what, I'm afraid of that in myself, but I'm not going to accept it in anybody else. That's why they become so adamant. Because, if you come out and wrap yourself in the Bible and wrap yourself in this, claimed moralism, what is that? I mean, the fact is in this country, we all have rights. We all have freedoms. And they can't come out and dictate through their show or through their family a certain way of acting, a certain way of being sexual, a certain way of living your life. And so in some ways I see this as karma because it really came back in a very bad way.
You agree with that, Holly?
I do. I absolutely do. You know, and like I said, like I pointed out, the reason people are so pissed off is because you have held yourself up to be, quote unquote, better than these other communities.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're, oh, well, we don't behave like that. We're better than that. We're, you know, and Michelle Duggar was quoted as coming out and saying, you know, transgender people should not be allowed to use the restroom for their current gender because, you know, we don't want people who would harm children, you know, males who are now females. They used to be males, and they're going to have access to young girls. And, okay, you don't have to have a public restroom to have access to young girls. And P.S., your own son is living proof of this. He had access to people, and he wasn't transgender using a different restroom, was he?
Right.
So, again, it's the hypocrisy. Like Annie said, it's going to come back and bite you in the butt. You know, everybody makes mistakes, but this was a criminal act. And the fact that you act like you're so much better than everybody else and you don't behave like that, and then guess what? We all find out you did. And that's what people are mad about. That's what they're mad
Holly.
about.
That's
How
awesome.
dare
You're right.
you?
Yeah, I know.
How dare you?
Mm-hmm.
It's total hypocrisy, and the cover up with the family, with the father, what he said about the transgender, is totally. What you said, Holly, is totally appropriate. They should do a show to learn and teach about
This could be a teaching moment. This could be a mea culpa. You know, I know Ann does and I do. I tell my clients, you know what? Sometimes you just got to man up, okay?
Right.
Man up. Say what you did. I will work like a crazy woman to get you the best deal I can, but you're going to have to accept some responsibility here.
And, you know, and when you're so right, Holly, and when they do that, I just had a client come in the other day that went through something like this. I won't go into the details other than it was a sexual assault type of an offense, a professional. When he went through all that, he came in my office. I have never seen him look so happy. You know, he'd finally gotten through all that, and he was like, I'm so grateful. And I thought, now that's the way it should be. You know, he accepted responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, he went to the treatment. He did everything. He lost his license for a while, and now he's back, but he's better than ever.
Exactly. But you have to fess up, Jordan. You have to accept your part in this action. Like Ann said, this is not a youthful indiscretion. This is child molestation, okay? This is a crime and not a single occurrence. From what we hear thus far, 5 victims. And that's 5 that we know about.
Probably whether 20 or 30.
That's exactly right. It's typically like the stats on drunk driving. For every time you've been caught driving drunk once, you have probably done it about 7 times. So, you know, the same thing holds true in these pedophile cases. You know, if we know of 5 victims, there are probably more out there. Now, I'm not stating that with definiteness. I don't know that there are. But typically, having worked in these, you know, with these type of crimes from both sides, like Annie, I was a prosecutor for a long time and then became a defense attorney. But until you accept responsibility and get the treatment and address your issue, you're going to continue to reoffend.
And that's an excellent point, Holly, is always that the other part of it is you see these offenders, you know, that maybe they'll molest their sisters and girls that they know or whatever, but then it keeps going on. What about, you know, other children, you know, what about neighbors' children? I mean, it's just like a vast net that they put out there, and so it's not just, you know, that time in his life, nor is it just the, you know, the type of people that were maybe not related to the family. What about his family? I mean, we may look and see that he molested his siblings. I mean, there's a lot of them, we know that, but you know, there's all the possibilities are really endless.
They are. Unfortunately, it is a very large potential victim pool.
Exactly.
It really is. Okay, let's